Nakano was a lonely, average Joe who was overused by his organization as a workhorse. He was so much of a loser that his loser energy reached out to an 800-year-old fox furry, causing her to feel pity for his sorry life, and decided to become his maid. Nakano finished his job for the day but was given more tasks to do by his co-worker who asked him for help. 3 fox furries watched him as he was stressed at work, causing a dark aura to envelop the man. One of the fox girls, Senko, volunteered to care for him because she could not stand his pitiful loser state. Nakano headed back home from his usual day of stressful work. As he arrived at his apartment, he noticed someone was in his house. He opened the door and found a fox girl cooking some food. When she noticed him, the girl welcomed him, causing him to believe that he was in the wrong apartment. After confirming that he was at the correct place, he wondered who she was and how she got into his house. He tried sending her out of the house, but it turned out she was a fan of the Portal video game series because she made a portal through the door and entered back in. She offered him dinner, but Nakano questioned who she was and how she got into his apartment. Seeing that he didn't intend to eat, she went to throw away the food. As she was about to do that, he realized that his stomach did not agree with that, so he stopped her and offered to eat. On the table, she got some food for Nakano and she watched as he tried the food, complimenting that it reminded him of his grandma's cooking. This made him realize how much of a lonely soy boy he was. He snapped back to reality as he wondered who the girl was and asked. She introduced herself as Senko, a demigod fox who aged 800 years, but her body couldn't catch up with her age. He tried asking her several times why she came to care for him, but she refused to answer directly, saying that his loser stench was pretty strong. After the meal, he thanked her for the food and she gave him some tea. As she carried the dishes away, he noticed a lucky tea stalk in his drink and a flashback to when he was with his grandmother. When she returned to the room, she told him not to worry and let her know if he needed anything. The word anything resounded in his head as he noticed Senko wagging her tail. He asked her if he could touch her tail and this request startled her, but she reluctantly agreed. While Nakano was having a good time with her tail, she was having one of the fiercest battles of her life. After that session was done, he apologized for getting so intense as he got reminded of petting his family's cat. He then mentioned how he couldn't do anything for Senko, but she said that all she needed was to see him smile. Afterward, she asked him to lie down and rest his head on her lap. He accepted the offer as she petted his head to sleep. When he woke up, she noticed how Nakano looked more relaxed. He confirmed this as he noticed his body felt lighter. He then thanked her for her service, but she said that she had only begun pampering him. The next day, Nakano woke up to begin his new day, thinking that his previous encounter was a dream but confirmed everything to be real when he was greeted by Senko. She was surprised with how early he was able to get up despite going to bed late, to which he replied that it had become a part of his routine. He got ready for his usual workday, and as he was about to leave for the office, she offered to prepare him some breakfast, but he declined the offer since he was running late for work. As he left for the office, leaving her behind, she decided to clean up the apartment and hung Nakano's bedding, which probably reeked of some fluids outside in the sun. Then she went to make some dinner before Nakano got home. After another rough day at work, Nakano arrived home and was welcomed by Senko. She noticed more of the dark aura radiating from him, so offered to heat some dinner and he went to have a bath afterwards. A while later, he fiddled with his ear and Senko offered to clean them, but he declined the offer, saying that it would be weird. The whole talk about ears gave him some intrusive thoughts about her own. She picked up on what was going through his mind and offered to let him touch her ears if she let her clean his. He rested his head on her lap and realized that the FBI may come for him at any moment. As he wondered why she was still helping him, she began to clean his ear, which made him realize that he had been starved from the touch of a woman. She continued cleaning, putting him in a state of bliss, and then fell asleep on her lap. As he slept, he had a dream that he was spending some time with Senko in a field. When he woke up, Senko had already finished her job and he asked if she had met him before. She couldn't recall but said that there was a possibility that they met. To much of her disappointment, Nakano remembered the deal they made earlier and allowed him to pet her ears. As he fiddled with her ears, he accidentally stuck his fingers into some holes, causing her to scream. Those were her ear canals. This scream made his neighbor rush out of her apartment and he apologized to Senko for this. She then suggested that he go to bed early since he seemed tired, but he mentioned that he was busy and had a bit of insomnia, so going to sleep would be difficult for him. She had him covered, mentioning that she put his bedding out in the sun. This allowed him to enjoy his bed and the two of them went to sleep. After a while, it occurred to Nakano that he was a terrible host as he realized that he left Senko to sleep on the floor. He woke her up and offered to get a futon for her, but she went to sleep on his bed. He then tried to sleep but failed because he was now on the FBI watch list. She noticed that he was having difficulty going to sleep, so she held his head to her chest and he pointed out that it had a whole load of nothing. But this was compensated for as her tail rested on his head. The two were playing video games and made a bet where he got to touch her tail if he won. Despite being the one who instigated the challenge, she lost the bet. He then chased Senko around the room while she tried to get away from him. In the middle of the commotion, Nakano's neighbor, Konji, barged in telling them to be quiet because the noise disturbed her, but she ended up witnessing the current situation. This made her misunderstand, thinking of Nakano as a pedophile, so he tried to clear the suspicion that his neighbor had. When he was successful, Senko then invited her to have a meal, and she accepted. Nakano asked about her neighbor and she introduced herself as Konji, and also said that she was a student and worked from home as a manga artist. Konji thanked them for the meal and Senko informed her that they would invite her when they had extra rations. This made Nakano analyze that his wallet would take an extra hit. Senko mentioned that the two might have a little fun time periodically and asked if she wouldn't mind. She answered that she wouldn't mind, stating that she tries not to let minor issues bother her, as if she didn't come to the place concerning the same minor issue in the first place. A while later, Konji noticed Senko's ears and tail, making her ask Senko if she was cosplaying a character from an anime she was a fan of. While she was clueless about cosplay, Nakano had to say that she was cosplaying in an attempt to keep her true identity a secret. Konji then introduced her to the anime she thought her cosplay was from, and then she bid her two neighbors farewell. Later on, the both of them watched the anime that Konji talked about. As it got late, Senko decided to make dinner, but discovered there was nothing to work with. The two of them decided to go shopping for some groceries, and Nakano covered her ears and tail with a hat and a coat to have her keep a low profile. As they reached the supermarket, Senko was fascinated with the place and how markets have changed over the years of her existence. Then they went around gathering the ingredients they needed and headed home. On the way home, Nakano realized that instead of getting worried about her, this was the first time he enjoyed shopping. He admitted that he would like to spend his days off with her. Nakano got back from work looking more exhausted than usual. He also revealed that he would have to work on Sunday, which was his day off, and then decided to go to bed. He wanted to set an alarm, but Senko offered to wake him up instead and went to sleep later on. The next day, she woke up first and Nakano also tried getting up from bed, but she used her tail to send him back to sleep, which was super effective. He woke up later and remembered the affair he had with her tail. He told her to forget what happened, but she refused, saying that was how he should act around her. Nakano's sleeping and caused him to miss work, and he mentioned that he would have more to catch up with the next day. Senko went to prepare dinner and he was surprised she was using foxfire to cook. He mentioned that there were stoves for this, but she said she didn't want to be out of practice. The next day, it was raining, but he decided that he would go to work. He noticed the humid weather and told her that she could turn on the AC, but she said that she wasn't very used to it and technology in general. As she bid him farewell, she decided to try using the appliances around the house. She started by turning on the AC, then she went on to use some of the appliances around the house while she cleaned the apartment and prepared dinner. However, she started to feel cold and tried to turn off the AC. However, she was unaware she was using the TV remote, causing her to turn it on. From there, she got confused as everything descended into chaos until the apartment's circuit breaker tripped off. Later on, Nakano arrived home and found it dark everywhere. He then found Senko frightened in the dark and went to turn on the circuit breaker, which returned power to the apartment. She felt ashamed, saying that she had caused trouble for him, but he told her not to worry and said that seeing her smiling face was all the help he needed. Back at the spirit realm, two of the other demigod furries watched the situation unfold and were disappointed. Then Shiro, a colleague of Senko, decided that she would go to the real world to pamper Nakano properly. As Nakano arrived home from another day of work, he found another demigod fox, Shiro, in his apartment and they all had dinner together. After they were done with dinner, Shiro complimented Senko's fried tofu. This made Nakano ask if they liked fried tofu because of Senko's obsession with cooking it. They mentioned that they got so many offerings of fried tofu that it became a part of their diet. Senko asked Shiro to leave if she was done, but instead, she announced that she was there to care for Nakano. She then let him pat her head. After a while, Senko decided to join in. This moved Nakano to a very happy place with the variety that he had now. After a while of petting, Shiro believed that Senko wasn't satisfying him. She used her foxfire to make Nakano reveal his hidden desires and found out that he wanted to pet her tail. Then she realized she made a mistake as Nekono was a man of specific tastes, but she escaped him by passing through the wall behind her. Meanwhile, Konji was frustrated by the work she was doing. On top of that, she hadn't slept through the night, causing her to lose her mind partly. Suddenly, Shiro entered her apartment through the wall, and she apologized for falling in and then left. Even though Konji was shocked about this, she believed she was hallucinating and finally decided to sleep. Later on, Senko prepared a bath for Nekono. As he went to have his bath, she noticed the dark aura around him and got an idea. She decided to have a bath with him, hoping to make him feel better. He refused to allow this as he closed the door when Senko opened it the first time. But he got reminded that resistance was useless as she passed through the bathroom door. He was uncomfortable with the idea of bathing with her, but he gave in eventually. In the bathroom, they both offered to scrub each other's backs. First, she scrubbed his back, satisfying his touch of starvation. When she was done, he scrubbed her back too. As he rinsed her back, her tail got wet in the process. This made him depressed. After bathing, he wondered if her tail would return to normal, but she used a hair dryer, returning it to its dry form. He went on to admire her tail once again. Later on, Shiro arrived back, but she accidentally entered Konji's apartment. Konji saw her and thought she was still hallucinating, so she took a nap and Shiro went to the next apartment, which was Nekono's. On arrival, Senko welcomed her to the apartment and she found Nekono in bed, who was currently resting on his day off. He asked if she wanted to play some video games, which she accepted. As Shiro played, Senko noticed that she played it easily and the game got too easy for her after a while. So, Nekono offered other video games he had in his collection and she picked a fighting game. She was still beating the game easily and Senko came in with some ohagi. Shiro rushed most of them, leaving one remaining. So she challenged Nekono to a match, saying that the winner would have the last one. She was able to beat him easily, but Senko revealed she was using her inner eye to read his mind and predict his movements. So she volunteered to make some more ohagi while Shiro and Nekono played more matches. Shiro declared that whoever won would get the ohagi, which Senko didn't see a problem with. Before they started their showdown, Nekono complimented her gaming skills, even without her reading his mind. This made her point out that he was always worried, which was why he lost. As the duel went on, he lost every match to Shiro and then she decided to take her leave. Senko went over to Konji's apartment and offered a meal to her as an apology for the disturbance caused by Shiro. This made her realize that she had not been hallucinating. They both went into the apartment and Senko noticed how messed up it was, questioning her non-existent hygiene practices. She then volunteered to help Konji clean up. While she enjoyed her meal, Senko got into action. She wondered about her new neighbor living with Nekono, thinking that her cosplay looked so real that she would almost believe she was an actual fox girl. When Senko was done cleaning, Konji thanked her for her service. Then she got an idea. She asked Senko to cosplay in a maid outfit that she got as reference material for her manga. As she observed the dress, she began to think that Konji lived in Nekono's walls because the dress was her size. When she wore the outfit, Konji took pictures of her, admiring her looks. She decided to give Senko the outfit when they were done to show thanks, and then Senko left. Later, Nekono arrived home and was greeted by Senko wearing the maid dress. This made him head back out because he was having none of that. She went through the door, going after him, and he said that the whole scene was a lot for him to take in. She mentioned that Konji gave her the outfit and asked if he liked it, but he replied that he preferred her old clothes. Meanwhile, at the spirit world, Shiro watched Senko and wondered about the maid outfit. Nekono and Senko finished having a meal and he carried the dishes when they were done, but his back suddenly hurt. She asked what was wrong, and he mentioned that he had to move heavy things at the office, making his back feel sore. She offered to massage him by stepping on him. This made him uncomfortable as he would be called out for his underlying foot fetish, so she offered to use her hands instead. As she carried on with the massage, he enjoyed it. He then asked if she could apply a bit more pressure, and this brought her back to her initial proposal. He finally succumbed to his interest as he had been checkmated, and let her step on him. As she carried on with the massage, the dark aura around him disappeared. After the massage, Senko pointed out that the happy noises he made were cute. Feeling embarrassed that she had just called him out, he decided to give her a massage. While he went on with the massage, he aimed for far horizons and touched the fur at the base of her tail, which she did not appreciate. When he was done, he pointed out that she sounded more satisfied than him, making her tickle him in retaliation. Meanwhile, Shiro watched them from the spirit world, wondering about their relationship. The next day, Nakano was awoken by a dream he had where he had a meal with Senko at a tree stump. A while later, he headed for work and ran into Konji, who was taking out the trash. From there, she and Senko waved him goodbye as he went to work. This made her remark on how he looked much happier recently, despite being tired. Senko also mentioned that he sounded even happier when she stepped on him, leading Konji to believe that they were down to get freaky. At work, a co-worker asked Nakano for help on a job, making him get overworked until nighttime. He hurried over to the train station when he was done, but already missed the last train. He decided to spend the night at the office but ran into Shiro, who figured he wasn't able to go home. Worried that people might spot her, he covered her with his jacket. Then she offered to send him home using her powers but asked for some snacks in return. When they were done snacking, Shiro opened a portal and the two of them went through it. As they were going through the portal, she suggested the reason Senko cared for him was most likely because he reminded her of his ancestor, who was her former master. They finally reached the end of the portal and he came out, arriving at his neighborhood. As he got home, Senko welcomed him, worried he wouldn't come back. She asked about his missing jacket and noticed that he smelled like another fox. He mentioned that he ran into Shiro, who helped him get home after he missed the last train, and also mentioned that he let her wear it but she went home with the jacket. At home, Nakano announced his long summer break of one day, and he decided that he would be spending it at home since he wouldn't be able to do much. Shiro popped through the wall behind him and decided to bring him to the beach, along with Senko and Konji. As they got to the beach, Konji mentioned that she didn't remember how she got there in the first place, but it turned out that Shiro had brought her along while she was asleep, causing Senko to tell her not to be so reckless due to her decision to bring Konji along. Shiro and Konji went to play in the water, while Senko and Nakano sat under an umbrella. He wondered how the two had become close friends, and she replied that they had been hanging out more, playing video games together. After Nakano received a headshot with a ball from them, Senko suggested they join them and he agreed. The four proceeded to play a game of volleyball. As the game went on, Nakano passed the ball to Senko, and she went Super Saiyan as she tried to spike the ball. She got reminded by a backache that she was not in Dragon Ball Z, causing her to miss. After a while, they decided to get something to eat and settled to have a barbecue. Unfortunately, she was unable to get any food. Shiro brought up the idea of catching fish, but Nakano pointed out that they didn't have any fishing gear. With her brain of infinite IQ, she insisted that she and Konji would use their hands. Senko and Nakano stayed back to set up the grill, and when they were done, he left to find some food. He found an empty shack, and as he entered it, he noticed a lady behind the counter who was aware of him and the others. She then gave him raw food to use for the barbecue, but as he was about to thank her, she disappeared. He got back to the grill with the food and explained the entire story to Senko. Shortly after, Shiro and Konji came back, unable to catch any fish as expected. They noticed the food and asked where it came from. Senko explained that Nakano got it from a shack, and then they proceeded to the barbecue with the food they had. At night, Senko and Nakano reflected on how they enjoyed the day. He mentioned that he was a bit sad that the day would end and he would go back to work the next day, but she replied that he shouldn't let himself suffer because of this since everything ends eventually. She told him to look forward to what was coming next instead. She then used her fox fire as a replacement for fireworks, and Konji thought these were a different kind of fireworks, but Shiro told her they weren't. Meanwhile, the same lady that Nakano came across at the shack observed him on a cliff. Then she disappeared. At home, Nakano prepared for work. While preparing, he watched a cooking show and began to crave gratin. He left for work while Senko continued watching the program and decided to try making gratin. She visited Konji for help since she didn't know how to prepare it. Luckily, Konji said that she could make it, and this made Shiro, who was playing video games, and Senko to be shocked at her claim since they hardly saw her cook. But she explained that she didn't cook because it was a pain. Konji, Shiro, and Senko went to the kitchen to prepare the gratin, and Senko realized she didn't recognize some of the ingredients Konji brought. The three of them proceeded with making the meal, and they ate it when they were successful. Senko mentioned that she would prepare it for Nakano now that she knew how to make it. As he got home, she made the gratin for him, and he noticed that it had some fried tofu and other ingredients that made it taste the same as her usual cooking. Meanwhile, at Konji's apartment, Shiro prepared some cup ramen for her. As quick as she ate the ramen, she spat it out because of how sweet it tasted. Shiro revealed that she added sugar to it, causing Konji to question her taste buds. The next day, as Nakano got home from work, Senko noticed that he was due for a haircut, so she volunteered to cut his hair. He feared that she might give him a haircut straight out of the Edo era. but she reassured him that she did her share of research on hairdressing. As she cut his hair, he was reminded of how his mother used to cut his hair when he was young and he dozed off. She then woke him up when she was done and he admired the haircut. He decided to wash his hair, but Senko, who was determined not to let him breathe on his own at this point, offered to wash his hair instead. As he refused, she bribed him by placing her tail on his face and continued with washing. Afterwards, he thanked her for washing his hair and she mentioned that she only copied what she saw. This made Nekono curious about what she had just implied. She confessed that this was the first time she had given anyone a modern haircut, and also admitted that she messed up a bit on his hair. This caused him to panic a bit, but she mentioned that she reconnected the bits of hair. As Senko woke up, she opened the window curtains and discovered it was snowing, which woke Nakano, who realized he had to go to work despite the snow. Seeing how heavy the snow was, Senko tried to stop him from leaving, but he was still determined to leave for the office until he got a message saying he didn't have to come. He decided to go back, and since he didn't have to go to work, but she took him outside instead and they walked around the area. They admired how the snow looked since it wasn't common to witness the amount of snow that fell, and Senko suggested that they play around, but Nakano said he was too old for that. Then he followed her as they continued walking around the environment, admiring the beauty of her ears and tail. As he looked around, Senko threw a snowball to the back of his head, making him finally give in and play with Senko. Meanwhile, Konji planned on going to the convenience store, but she noticed the snow outside and then saw her two neighbors making a snowball outside. After they finished playing, the two of them went back to the apartment and Senko went to heat some bath water since she noticed Nakano was cold. He then asked if he could warm his hands using her tail and she reluctantly agreed. As he rubbed her tail, his cold hands got to her, making her cold in the process. A while later, he went to touch her tail again, but his tail cuddling session got interrupted when she mentioned that she had to make dinner. Out of nowhere, a lady, who was also another demigod fox, showed up to meet them. Senko recognized who she was and asked why she came. Nakano also recognized her as the lady who gave them the food at the beach, and they both thanked her for her gift. She revealed her name to be Sora and also Senko's boss, which was apparent to Nakano as he noticed the massive pair of plots she established dominance with. Sora proceeded with her conquest of him, and before she could get far, Senko stopped her, asking her not to toy with him too much. But Sora suggested that it was because she wouldn't be able to indulge him. She then pushed him onto the bed and got on top of him, offering her full package to him. But Nakano, being a man of specific tastes, said that he wanted to pet her tail. This made Senko jealous and she went to him. Unfortunately, that was one request she wasn't willing to grant, and she pointed out his uncanny tastes and decided to leave. Before she did, she told him that his face always looked sad and warned him about something bad happening. In the kitchen, Senko was upset with him and his weird obsession with demigod foxtails despite being there for him. When he pointed out that she was jealous, she denied this claim, saying she was worried about him. Due to her being upset, she didn't prepare a decent meal for the two of them. As Senko was cleaning the apartment, she opened a box containing a pattern that reminded her of a time in Nakano's childhood. She recalled how she helped him when he was young out of a forest to his grandmother, making him offer the plum branch he was holding to a fox statue. He got home from his usual strenuous work and noticed that Senko had set up something different in an attempt to cheer him up. She set an array of drinks to go with their meal, and as they drank, she mentioned that the cherry blossoms would bloom soon and asked if he would like to watch them with her sometime. After a while, he got drunk and Senko noticed that he was being very abusive towards himself. From there, he explained the rough experience he faced at work and how he considered himself inadequate. She then comforted him, and this caused him to start crying while she continued to offer comfort. When he was done with his vent, he fell asleep, landing on her tail. However, she noticed that the shadow aura around him was still growing. At the spirit world, Shiro complained that it had been a year since she went to stay with Nakano, but Sora mentioned that it wouldn't be long until she came back. After another rough work day, Nakano got home and announced to Senko that he got a leave from work. He then decided to go on a trip with her and asked if she had any place in mind, but she suggested the supermarket in the next town. She also suggested cherry blossom viewing even though it was still too early. The next day, Nakano's mother called him and she mentioned that his father was taken to the hospital. Luckily, she said that he was still okay and Senko suggested that he head home to visit them. As he was leaving, he dropped his smartphone with Senko and showed her how to use it. Then she waved him goodbye on his journey. He arrived at the hospital and met with his mother, who apologized for making him worry and mentioned that his father broke a bone from getting drunk at a school reunion. Meanwhile, back at the apartment, Senko was packing her things as she planned to leave, but she was met by Konji, who was returning the bento box for a meal she had, and she thanked Senko for it. Konji saw her packed up and wondered if she was traveling, to which she replied yes, and as she began to leave, as Konji told her goodbye. At his family home, Nakano visited his grandma's grave. Then he tried calling his other phone at home, but there was no answer. The next day, he got ready for his journey and tried calling his smartphone that he left with Senko once again, but there was still no answer. This made him guess that she was perhaps still having trouble using it. As he left, he told his mom to give his regards to his dad, and she gave him some fried tofu as a gift. When he got to his apartment, he entered but found no one around. Wondering about Senko's whereabouts, he went to ask Konji if she had any idea where she could be. She recalled that she saw Senko packing a few things and leaving, and also mentioned that Shiro had not visited her for a while. In the spirit world, Senko prepared some meals, then decided to meet Sora, wondering why the darkness still lingered around Nakano. She stated that she took care of him for an entire year and she wasn't able to get rid of it. As a result, she decided that there was no need for her to return to Nakano. Back on Earth, while Nakano searched for Senko, she had a flashback of how his ancestor cared for her in the past when she was in trouble. Sora mentioned that humans lived much shorter lives than them, leaving her to experience the same heartbreak with his ancestor if she stayed with him. Senko acknowledged this happening and vowed to help as much as she could and pamper him to his heart's content. Meanwhile, Nakano arrived at some cherry trees, unable to find Senko, but saw her in his path a short while later. He said that he never thought he would see her again, and this caused her to wonder why. He replied that she had not answered the phone since yesterday. While she concealed everything that had happened in the spirit world, she mentioned that she left to restock supplies in the spirit world. From there, the two of them went to watch the cherry blossoms. They had a picnic under the cherry trees as they watched the blossoms, and Nakano remembered that she had been watching over him as a child. Unfortunately, she didn't remember, but he thanked her for everything. A while later, Konji and Shiro found them and joined them for the picnic. Shiro mentioned wanting to watch the last episode of the Little Yoko anime. Luckily, Konji said she had it on her laptop, and the two watched it together. Then Nakano told Senko that they should stick together, which she agreed with.